All right, well, today we're going to get rid of these temporary upper shock mounts and put in the permanent ones. Here we go. All right, well, we got the shock mounts welded in. I think what I'm going to do now is build some reinforcement gusset plates here that they'll go sort of just below the surface here and then kind of weld in here. They'll have holes in them. Make them out of 1/8 inch. One that goes across here and meets this plate, and one that goes across here and just fills this gap up in here. Yeah, I might have a good time with that and TIG weld it. We'll see. But yeah, just something in here that kind of covers the top surface of the shock mount here and stiffens everything up and just reinforces everything. All right. All right, this is what I kind of had in mind with my cardboard templates here. There'll be a big window in this one, so you have access over the top to the bolt with a wrench. And then this one, another window, so you can see the shock. When you're mounting the shock, you can see the top of the shock coming through and see if your bolt's coming through, if everything's lining up. And then down here, probably some more speed holes coming through here. Just a little added insurance that sort of stiffens up this whole shock area and triangulates it or ties it into this cross tube here. So I don't think there's anything, I don't think we need to put anything back here. In fact, I'm going to leave this space open because there's going to be a master cylinder in here. I'm going to have to mount that. And probably somewhere in here, there's probably going to need to be a mount. Well, it'll probably be over on this side for the power steering reservoir. So, yeah. Got the old cardboard out. Now I got to start drawing it all up. Well, I got these gussets all cleaned up. They're just sitting in there. I need to fine tune them a little bit. This one is sitting a little bit proud of this, so I need to just knock the corners off to make clearance for the welds underneath there. And I got these slots in here, not only to lighten them up, but also so I can access the nut for the shock mount. And then also here I can see the bolt on the top of the shock eye as I'm installing it. So yeah, so it's pretty late in the evening now. I'm not going to even attempt to try to weld these in tonight. I'll do that first thing in the morning. The other side's done, ready to go too. So see you in the morning. All right, good morning. So I got shock mounts and shock mount gussets in. I went ahead and TIG welded these. It was good practice. It's not pretty, it's not perfect, but practice is the only way you're going to get better. I got them in on both sides. The next thing I need to do is put in some more lacing tubes or bracing tubes. There's going to be a tube that goes from this junction here up to here. From this junction here up to underneath here. That'll kind of brace up this and make it more of a node. And then I need something that goes from somewhere over here back down to this frame rail. So like up here, then down to here. Probably should put the shocks back on just to make sure I'm not interfering with the shocks in any way. If I bring something out to this, it's most likely going to be in the window of the shock. I'm not sure, so that's why I need to put the shocks back in. And then we'll start mocking up some tubes to make bracing. I also put in link mount gussets up here on the upper link mounts at the chassis side, both passenger and driver. And then these same gussets are going to go on the bottom side of those link mounts. And this tubing's all welded in up top. There's a couple different ways I can go now. I can make my permanent links out of 2-inch material, or continue with this bracing and start working on my bump stop mounts. I need to have that bracing in underneath here in the hood section area on the front end before I put my bump stop or start working on my bump stop mounts. I went and bought some 1 1/4 for the bump stop cans, and those are gonna live somewhere in here. That's what this flat area on the top of the truss is for the bump pad. So yeah, plenty of stuff to do. It's gonna take plenty of time, but here we go. All right, so a perfect example of why I need to put the shock back on, because we have the reservoir hose to contend with. And I need to go, I'm gonna use this piece of angle iron as a pointer. I need to go from this junction right here where the outrigger tube or the cab tube comes into the main frame rail. I need to go from here up to somewhere underneath here to support the shock mount. Ideally, the tube should come underneath this junction, but I can't cross through there because I have the reservoir hose. I could turn the shock around to where the reservoir hose is sticking out to the outside of the buggy, or the fitting, I guess, for the shock hose. But I don't want to do that because I don't want it'll be pointing up into the shock mount because of the way the angle is on the shock, number one. Number two, and it won't clear. At least I don't think it'll clear. It might clear. But then I got to run. I'd have to run it back through underneath here and then mount the reservoir somewhere underneath here. That means the hose is going to be sticking down somewhere in here, which is not going to work because that's where the bump stop's going to be. So ideally, I mount the reservoir somewhere underneath this tube, which I think will work good. Or, yeah, I was gonna say I could cross them over this crossover tube, but I don't think that's gonna work. Anyway, back to what I was originally trying to say. So I need to go from this junction right here up to the shock mount area somewhere right here, but still provide a window for that reservoir hose to come through. So it's going to be, it's going to have to be, if I move, I can't really do this with one hand here. It's going to have to be something like that. That tube's going to have to come up something like that, I believe. And I think, you know, with the boxed in section of the gussets on the shock mount, I think that'll be fine. Then there'll be over here, down here, preferably where this joint is, going back up to here, underneath here, underneath where this junction is right here, something like that. I don't know if that makes sense or if you can see that. It's kind of hard to film this with one hand, but yeah, like that. And then that leaves clearance for everything with the exception of maybe the bump stop can, which is going to be living somewhere down in this area. So yeah, we'll be tacking tubes in and then checking for clearances. Over here, there's going to be another tube that crosses over here in front of, above and in front of the axle, that goes to each one of these joints. And then that's going to support the winch mount plate. That's going to go right here, where if the plate was installed, you wouldn't see my feet. So yeah, fun stuff. Lots of fun stuff. So here we go. All right, so I got this first initial tube set up in here. I've got this angle, I think, pretty well figured. And now I got I've got to dress this up a little bit to clear right here, to clear this tube junction coming in. But that'll fit nice and tight. And then this tube's going to come up and then land underneath this tube. And this is how I figure out the angle to run my hole saw or the tubing notcher. I set this up there and find the angle. I know the top leg is the hole saw coming through, and I know this leg that's going more vertical up and down is the leg of the tube. So once I get that angle sort of figured out, then I go and I reset the tubing notcher for it. But first I need to dress up this right here so it's got a nice tight fit in here. And then I need to cut this tube to a close length, and then I can nibble away with it with the tubing notcher. All right, so that is very close. Now I need to dress up these ends with a flapper disc, get all this real thin material that's at the end of the notch cleaned up. That'll shorten up the tube effectively. That'll bring these joints in and make them nice and tight. So I've got those two tubes in, this one here, this one here. They're coming up and bracing straight up underneath from the frame rail up to the backside of the shock mount, with plenty of clearance for the hose. I didn't want to get too close in there. So the next thing I need to do is a tube from the frame rail here up to, I was thinking I could go over here, but if I go over here, then when the axle articulates, the tire gets awfully close to the shock, and it's gonna hit the tire, or the tire's gonna hit that tube if I go to this joint here. So I need to go to this joint. So it'll be from here up to the bottom of this joint. However, I cannot install that until I get the bottom side of these joints all welded. And I would rather not weld overhead, so I can't weld those until I get this all torn apart and I'm able to flip the chassis over. So I can maybe just go ahead and fit those up. I don't know. I gotta figure out what I want to do there. All right, so I did some figuring. I think I kind of fabricated myself into a stopping point here. This is the tube I want to add. This would come up underneath this node right here where everything's come together for the shock mount. I can't add that tube until I've got these joints welded on the underside. I don't want to add it prior to getting that all welded out. Then furthermore, this tube that's going across is going to get cut. And I have 3-bolt flanges on here to make this tube removable so you can get the engine in and out. So I want to make sure, before I do the cutting of that tube, I want to make sure this is all welded up. And then I'll cut that, and then I'll do the flanges. But I can't install this tube until I get that node over there where the shock mount is. This node over here all welded out on the underside. And then I can't start working on bump can mounts until this tube is in. So maybe I go and start working on link mounts. I have a brace tube that needs to go between the backside of here and this tube. I can put those in, and then maybe I can start building links, because we know what the link lengths need to be. I've got to make a jig for that, for the welding positioner. I would really like to start working on the rear end, but I can't work on the rear end until I get the drive shaft back. My guy that's building the drive shaft, he's down in SoCal, and they're having all kinds of trouble with the fires, and this power keeps going out. He's not in danger of the fire, but this power keeps going out because I keep on turning the power out down there because of the really high winds. So yeah, we'll figure on something else to maybe start working on. I'll maybe get these tubes in and then start measuring my link lengths and start making links. All right, here we go. Well, I got these tubes welded in, these little backer tubes. I've got the same tube back here mocked up. I'm not gonna weld those in yet because I just wanna make sure that's indeed where the link's gonna go. Again, after I get the rear drive shaft, I don't wanna weld anything in permanent until I get that. So I got, like I said, I got that tube and that one over there behind that link mount welded in. It occurred to me that I had a second firewall tube to fit up that will go on the back side of this under here, and it goes down to that, the front of that node. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then I also have a fender tube, and we'll see how far I get today, but I have a fender tube that goes from here and then curves in. It's rolled and it curves in and goes up to here. So I think I'm gonna do that on this chassis. It's just kind of a signature look, and it gives you more body panel space. Yeah, so I'll keep working on this. I'll do that one. I realize that I can't mock up, or I can't weld up links yet because I'm waiting on water cooler for the TIG machine. Yeah, so I'll just keep on plugging away. These little tubes is what takes a bunch of time, and I'll do the ones I can while the chassis, you know, in this state of completeness. And then, like I said, after I have time to pull everything apart and flip the chassis over and finish up all the bottom side welds, I can't really do any of the other front end tubes yet. So I also have, while I'm thinking about it, I also have gusset tubes that go in here that kind of complete that, zoom out here, that complete the shear on here. And then I think one that goes here. And then in the back side of the window, there'll be a tube that goes here, tube that goes here, tube that goes here, or maybe not one up here, I don't remember. One here, one up here. I don't remember what I got all cut out, but they're all cut out and ready to go. I just need to tack them in. So I've got to finish up these seams, and TIG welded those on the front, so I think I'll TIG weld these two, just because. Yeah, so there's a bunch of little things I can do. I'm not at a standstill, so keep it going.